boxing just reminded Jake Paul that there's a big difference between making noise and making it at the very top of the sport. His huge showdown with Anthony Joshua ended not only in a brutal 6-round knockout, but with a broken jaw and a major reality check for his entire boxing experiment. But here's the twist. Even after being laid out by a former unified heavyweight champion, having his jaw shattered in 2 places, and being kicked out of the WBA cruiserweight rankings, Jake Paul is already talking about coming back. Not a heavyweight this time, but back down closer to his natural size, chasing a cruiserweight world title. So what actually happened in Miami? What does losing his ranking really mean? And is his boxing run finished? Or just getting a painful reset? Let's break it all down. This fight was never some quiet undercard. Jake Paul versus Anthony Joshua was designed as a global event from the start. The Casillas Center in Miami was packed, the lights were bright, and Netflix turned the whole thing into a worldwide spectacle. According to early numbers, around 33 million people tuned in globally. That's not just influencer boxing interest, that's full-on mainstream sport attention. The event didn't just do well, it dominated. It hit #1 on Netflix in 45 different countries and landed in the top 10 in 91 regions. On social media, the fight and its build-up exploded to more than 1.25 billion impressions. Whether you tune in as a Jake Paul fan, an Anthony Joshua supporter, or just someone hoping to see chaos, this fight reached you somehow. And that's the complicated thing about Jake Paul. Even when he loses, he wins in terms of numbers. His credibility inside the ring just took a hit, but his ability to draw a crowd, stronger than ever. To really understand how big this loss is, you have to look at where Jake was right before this matchup. For years, a lot of people brush him off as a YouTuber playing fighter, the guy who boxed other influencers, retired MMA stars, and non-traditional opponents. But then came the turning point, his win over Julio Cesar Jr. That victory was the one he and his team lean on say, look, this isn't a gimmick anymore. It got him noticed by one of boxing's major sanctioning bodies, the World Boxing Association. They actually placed him in their cruiserweight rankings. For someone who came from the entertainment world and forced his way into a serious sport, that was a huge deal. It gave him something he'd been chasing from the start, official recognition. That ranking was more than a number next to his name. It meant he was theoretically on a path, even if a long one, toward a world title shot at cruiserweight. It was his ticket into real boxing in the eyes of many. And then came the Anthony Joshua fight. On paper, this was one of the wildest matchups you could imagine. Anthony Joshua is a former unified heavyweight champion, an Olympic gold medalist, a man who's fought the best of the best in the sport. Jake Paul is still in the early stages of his career, learning in front of millions. Yes, he brought momentum, confidence, and a big platform. But in terms of boxing resume, the gap was enormous. When the bell rang in Miami, you could see that gap almost immediately. Joshua fought like a seasoned pro who's seen every style in the ring. He stayed composed, used his superior size, reach, and experience, and didn't let the chaos of the event get to him. Jake, for all his improvements and preparation, was suddenly facing an opponent who was not just better than anyone he'd seen before, but significantly bigger, stronger, and more polished. Round after round, it became clearer that Jake was being outclassed. He had moments, sure, he always does. He's tough, he's game, and he doesn't freeze under pressure. But against someone of Joshua's caliber, that wasn't enough. Joshua controlled the tempo, picked his shots, and slowly broke Jake down. Then came the 6th round. Joshua finally found the opening he was looking for and closed the show. The knockout wasn't one of those flash drops where a fighter pops right back up. It was decisive. It underlined what many boxing purists have been saying long before this fight was even signed. Skipping levels in this sport comes with real consequences. And in Jake's case, those consequences were literally written across his face. After the fight, the full extent of the damage came out. Jake had suffered not just a basic break, but double fractures to his jaw. He later shared X-ray images showing 2 clean breaks. That's not just a tough loss, that's a serious injury. He underwent surgery to repair the damage, and doctors inserted titanium plates to stabilize the bone. On social media, he admitted he was dealing with lots of pain and stiffness. He explained he'd be on a liquid diet for about a week as the healing process begins. Anyone who's ever had a minor jaw issue can imagine the discomfort. Now multiply that by 2 fractures and fresh surgery. For most people, this would be the moment to quietly disappear from sport and say, all right, I pushed it as far as I could, but that's not how Jake Paul operates. Even with his jaw wired and his body recovering, he was already setting the tone for what he wants next. He made it very clear. He is not done with boxing. Not yet. In his own words, he said the plan is simple. We will heal the broken jaw, come back and fight people my weight, and go for the Cruiserweight World title. That's a crucial line, because it acknowledges something a lot of boxing fans have been saying all along. He was fighting too big. Anthony Joshua is a true heavyweight. Jake Paul, in reality, is more naturally placed around cruiserweight when he talked about people my weight. He's finally leaning into the idea of building his future in a division that makes more sense physically and strategically. But while he's talking comeback and world titles, the boxing politics side of things has already responded to the Joshua loss in a much harsher way. One of the first official consequences after the defeat was that Jake Paul was removed from the WBA cruiserweight rankings. That ranking he worked so hard to secure with the Julio Cesar Jr. win, gone. Being dropped from those rankings doesn't mean he can never return, but it does mean he's not currently in the official mix at cruiserweight. Any talk of a world title path now starts from further back than before. He'll have to rebuild with wins against legitimate contenders in and around that division if he wants to regain that position. And that's where the big question comes in. Can he? Part of that answer lies not just in what happened on fight night, but in what he's admitting about his preparation. In the days after the loss, Jake went on an Impulsive podcast and opened up about what he thinks was one of his biggest mistakes. He didn't do altitude training. He said, I should have gone to altitude to train, and pointed out that additional high-altitude work could have helped his conditioning and allowed him to maintain a better pace deeper into the fight. Now, to be clear, altitude training alone isn't going to magically turn anyone into a world-class heavyweight. But the fact that he's already focusing on specific training decisions does tell you something. He's in reflection mode, not retirement mode. He's trying to figure out how to come back better, not whether he should walk away. From a technical standpoint, conditioning was definitely a factor. Against a big heavyweight like Joshua, every movement costs more energy. Every clinch, every defensive sequence, every exchange drains a tank. If you're even slightly behind in the gas department, it shows, especially in the middle and late rounds. Jake clearly felt that lag, and now seems determined to address it. But even beyond conditioning, this fight might force him to rethink his entire approach to matchmaking and career planning. Going from being ranked at cruiserweight to fighting one of the top heavyweights in the world was a massive jump. An entertaining one for fans, yes, but from a pure boxing development perspective, it was a huge gamble. It paid off in terms of attention, Netflix views, and headlines. It did not pay off in terms of rankings, momentum, or physical health. And yet, if you look at the business side, Jake Paul remains a massive attraction. That 33 million global viewers figure speaks louder than any one result. The fight hitting #1 on Netflix in dozens of countries proves that whether people think he's overrated, brave, reckless, or legit, they are still tuning in to watch. That's why industry observers are split but fascinated. On one hand, his credibility at heavyweight has clearly taken a hit. It's hard to argue he belongs in that division at the elite level after being convincingly outgunned by Joshua. On the other hand, his drawing power hasn't gone anywhere. Broadcasters, promoters, and even rival fighters know that a Jake Paul event means eyeballs, media coverage, and big paydays. So what does the next phase look like? The most realistic path, based on everything he said, is a move back down to cruiserweight. That's where the WBA had him ranked before the Joshua loss. And that's where his size makes more sense. If he really wants to chase a cruiserweight world title, he's going to have to stack wins over legit names at or near 200 pounds. No more circus-style matchmaking. He'll need real contenders, real tests, and smarter, more measured progression. He's also going to need time. That jaw is to fully heal. The titanium plates have to settle. He has to get used to taking shots again mentally, not just physically. It's one thing to say you're coming back after a brutal knockout and fractures. It's another thing to actually walk into that ring again and trust your body. But one thing no one can deny is that Jake Paul has never shied away from risk. He skipped a lot of the traditional learning curve, put himself under the brightest lights possible, and took on a challenge that, frankly, most people in his position wouldn't have touched. Did it end badly for him on the night? Absolutely. Did it also prove that he's willing to put his reputation and health on the line in a way most influencers would never even consider? Yes, that's why his next move will be one of the most closely watched in combat sports. If he comes back at cruiserweight, faces opponents his own size, tightens up his training camp, maybe including that altitude work he wishes he'd done, and starts building real wins again, he can rebuild not just his ranking, but his reputation in the boxing world. The WBA dropping him from the cruiserweight rankings might feel like a step back, but also gives him a fresh target to aim for. If he doesn't adjust, if he chases oversized challenges just for spectacle again, the risk is that nights like the Joshua fight become a norm instead of the exception. For now, though, the situation is pretty clear. Jake Paul is out of the WBA cruiserweight rankings. He's recovering from surgery with titanium plates in a jaw that was broken in 2 places. He's living on liquids while the bone heals. He's publicly admitted to training mistakes and is already talking about recalibrating his entire approach, focusing on people my weight, and eventually going after a cruiserweight world title. And, like it or not, millions of people will be watching what he does next. The Joshua fight might have shut the door on his heavyweight ambitions, at least for now, but it hasn't closed the book on his boxing career. In some ways, this might be the first time he's forced to operate more like a traditional fighter. Rebuild, stay in his lane weight-wise, learn from a painful defeat, and climb back the hard way. Whether you see him as a disruptor, a sideshow, or a legitimate fighter still finding his place, one thing is undeniable. Jake Paul remains one of the most talked about names in boxing, and that alone guarantees his comeback. Whenever it happens, and whoever it's against, will once again have the world paying attention. Let me know in the comments. Do you think Jake should stay at cruiserweight and slowly rebuild? Or has this loss to Anthony Joshua exposed the ceiling of his boxing career?